you. My name is Pat Brophy. I am the Mayor's Chief of Operations, and what that basically means is I'm in charge of 3 departments here, Inspectional Services, the Property Management Department, and the Public Facilities Department. I'd like to point out Commissioner Joe Callahan, right over here, from the Property Management Department, and Director Tricia Lyons from the Public Facilities Department. Both of these folks have been working with a lot of our colleagues in government and the team from Sasaki and Kate Tooke and a number of the folks that you see with the Sasaki shirts here to work on developing a design to reinvigorate Boston City Hall Plaza. And that is coming out of a programming study that was conducted at the mayor's request in 2015. For about 2 years, we went on a listening tour and an analysis of how this building works and how the plaza operates and how the two connect. And we wanted to figure out a way in which we could make this building a lot more accessible, a lot more inviting, and a placemaking spot for Bostonians, residents, visitors, businesses to come in and enjoy this space, this ample 7-acre space that we see outside of our front door. We believe it's a space that has been underutilized for quite some time. We have heard from a lot of people in a lot of different ways about how this space could use a refresher and how that it's a little dated, and we would agree. After our initial analysis, we have come to determine that there are a lot of things that we could improve upon in terms of aesthetics and structural integrity and utilities and access points and, again, accessibility. We're going to open this program up and we're going to go through a slide deck. I'm sure you may have seen a lot of our recent press that has been in the Globe, the Herald, 457, 25, a couple of different locations. And what we're trying to do is get the word out so that people will come in and engage with us and listen to the design so that we're hearing the voices of people who are interested in seeing this, our front yard, the People's Plaza, better used and better utilized. Your participation in this process is integral to a successful project. We're looking to start work on the renovation work in spring, summer of next year. And we're looking to do about $60 million worth of construction. The total project cost is about $70 million. We're going to detail that work and that effort in the preliminary schematic design in this presentation, and then we're going to do some breakout sessions so that you can sit down and meet with a number of our teams from the city and from the architecture and design team so that we can hear your input on what we're doing here. We think that this is very important. The mayor feels that this is very important to engaging community members, asking people to engage with their government, and figuring out ways in which these things can better serve Boston's constituency. So with that, I'd like to introduce Kate Tooke from Sasaki, who's going to walk us through the presentation. I'd ask that folks maybe make notations or think about questions that we could ask at the end, because we want to we have a number of slides that we want to get through, and we want to hear everyone's comments, and we want to hear the feedback, but we do want to get through this presentation and keep the discussion moving. So with that, Kate, come on in. Thanks.
Sorry about this. I'm not quite as tall as you, Pat. There we go. Excellent. My name is Kate Tooke. I am with Sasaki. You probably have seen many of our staff throughout the plaza today. We're here in abundance. Sasaki is a local design firm, but we do global work. So we are based here in Watertown, but we're an interdisciplinary design firm that does work like this throughout the country and beyond. So we're really thrilled to be working here in our own backyard and to bring you designs for the plaza. So the presentation tonight is going to have 3 main parts, and then, as Pat said, at the end, we're going to dismiss to an open house where you'll have a chance to engage with us as a design team and with the city to ask your questions and to give your feedback. So the presentation has one first part. We're going to share about the project background, why we are here today. We'll share with you the schematic designs, and then we'll talk about the benefits of this project for the people of Boston and beyond in a series of vignettes and renderings. renderings, which can share a little bit about the spirit of the place. So I think many of you here may know that this building and the plaza recently celebrated its 50th anniversary right here in this space, with Michael McKinnell, the original architect, celebrating the original design and the city celebrating that design. I think it's pretty well documented, the history of this building within this space. It's a brutalist building. It has a tripartite order, which means it was very intentionally designed to have administrative uses at the top, a ceremonial set of hoods, which indicate the mayor and the city council's offices, and then the public brick mound, which you actually are sitting on right now, was really meant to connect the city to its public government. So the city's brick sidewalks were meant to be a carpet which came through the city and connected to this public transactional layer of the building, and then continued on through the rest of the city. So I think it's important to recognize that the brick plaza that we're all familiar with today has its roots in trying to be a democratic carpet which connected the city of Boston to this democratic space. However you feel about the architecture and how it's expressed, I think it's important to recognize that this has been, for the past 5 decades, Boston's most important place to gather. This is Boston's democratic space. It's our place where we come to in celebration and in protest in order to gather. And it's served that function really well for the city of Boston. But at the same time, when it's not activated, I think this is Boston's place that we sort of love to hate as Bostonians. It has a sort of terrible reputation on a daily basis for being barren and windswept. The red tundra, it's not a super friendly place. It makes you feel very small, and it's not very welcoming. And it's been that way for 5 decades. The city has done a really admirable job invigorating the space with temporary activations. So here you can see some of those, the lawn, the Adirondack chairs, the patios, beer garden, temporary play installations, Boston Winter. All of these have been incredible efforts to activate the space on sort of a short-term basis. But I think we all also need to recognize that those temporary activations only get us so far. The physical limitations of this space are real and they are intense, and they really need to be dealt with in order to bring this space into the 21st century. These include accessibility, as Pat mentioned, but also significant limitations to the infrastructure which sits underneath this plaza. It sits on top of the oldest train tunnels in the country, and those train tunnels have limited loading capacity, which really limits the potential of events on the plaza. So several things that need to be addressed here. The mayor launched this process back in 2015, as Pat mentioned, by really inviting Bostonians to reimagine their own front yard and to think about what the potential of this civic space could be in the city of Boston. And so that launched a process called the Rethink City Hall Master Plan. And that really is a visioning effort that looked at both the plaza and the building over a period of 30 years and set long-term vision and values for what this space, both the building and the plaza, could be together for the city. And that has launched this process of where we are today. So over the process of this design process, we've spoken to many stakeholders, and often we get this question, well, why invest now? And the reason really is twofold. The answer is twofold. The first is that this is an opportunity to invest in democracy. This is Boston's gathering place, and in today's political climate, it's more important than ever that Bostonians have a place to gather and a place to express their civic voice. And the second piece of this puzzle is that those physical limitations and the infrastructural challenges here are not going away. And we have to address them at some point. It's only going to get more expensive to do so. So the time is now. The mayor has elected the time to be now, and we have this incredible opportunity to renovate this space. So now we get to this part of what is this renovation actually going to look like. I want to share with you a little bit about our process to date. As I mentioned, we are sitting on the foundation of a really incredible and visionary master plan, Rethink City Hall, which set high-level vision and values for the next 30 years for the plaza and the building. Out of that document, we are now embarking on a first phase of renovations for City Hall Plaza, which was prioritized in the master plan as one of the first projects. So where we are now, we've recently completed a concept and schematic design phase in which we looked at 3 different concept alternatives, refined those with stakeholder feedback into one alternative, and then have taken a piece of that, which you'll see tonight, to invest in as phase 1. We're right on the cusp of a new phase, design documentation, where we'll be taking this design, including your feedback, and then detailing that design so that it can be construction ready. And then construction will take about 18 to 24 months at the end of that design process. You can see that throughout the design process, there have been a lot of opportunities for the public and stakeholders to give their feedback and their input into the process. Below here are just some of the many, many voices that have already been heard through the master plan process and through stakeholder meetings that we as a design team have held. And we've heard a number of really common themes. The voices are sort of unified in what they tell us about the plaza, what the public wants, places to gather, places to be on a daily basis, better accessibility, better opportunity to host events no matter where you're coming from in the city. And we as a design team have taken all that input and distilled it into 4 pillars of the design, which we're going to talk to you about today. So really the idea here is that as an overarching goal, we as a team, we as the public, City of Boston, want to reinvigorate the civic heart of Boston, the plaza. This is our place. And there are 4 pillars that are going to help us get there. So these are a welcoming front yard for civic life. I should probably say a welcoming front yard if I'm in Boston. But a welcoming front yard for civic life is really about your daily activation and daily use. It's about access, it's about comfort, it's about amenities that you want to use on a daily basis. A flexible and accommodating event venue is capturing all those great ideas we heard about making sure that this is a place that can host all different kinds of events for all different kinds of Bostonian functions. A model for sustainability and resilience captures all the great ideas we heard about making sure that this is a place that demonstrates green infrastructure and really shows off to the city and the world how green Boston is. And finally, a renewed cultural and architectural legacy is really about making sure that we honor the architectural roots of this as a place and as a landmarked place within the city of Boston and beyond, and making sure that that's incorporated into the design so that we have a sense of history in this place as well. Overlaid on top of that are a number of specific program elements which both the city, the master plan, and stakeholder process have defined. And I won't go through all of these. You'll have a chance to engage with a lot of these topics more deeply in the open house portion, but I think it's important to recognize 2 particular things. One is that over here on the right-hand side, accessibility is an incredibly important driver of this project, ensuring that there are accessible connections, universally accessible connections, between all streets and all parts of the plaza and the main access points to the building. And second, I want to draw your attention to the idea of event space. Right now, the plaza can host about 40,000 people across its entire brick area. And the city's idea really is that we need to right-size that space. So bring the scale of that space down so it can still host an event of 10 to 12,000 people and have multiple smaller gathering spaces that supplement that for different kinds of smaller events. Overall, the whole plaza could still host about 20,000 people in an event like Pride, which is happening this weekend. So here is the full concept. I'm going to take a moment to just walk you through this. I think for those who aren't as oriented reading plans, I think it's important to realize that Faneuil Hall is here and the MBTA is here. These are those big stairs that you're used to going up. And City Hall is in the center there. So starting here at the north corner, the design includes an accessible pathway, which we call the Hanover Promenade, which connects the original Hanover Street corridor back into the city as a pedestrian route, and accessibly brings people from Congress Street up to the main plaza. Along the way, you pass a playscape, a water wall, a revived North Entry Court, which is an opportunity to make the North Entry, which was envisioned once as a primary public entrance to the building, but has been closed since 9/11, once again a public entrance to the main transactional levels of this building. So a new North Entry and Court, terraces to hang out with on a daily basis, a right-sized event area, flexibly able to host 10 to 12,000 people, or farmers markets, or Boston Winter, an upper plaza, which has a shaded covering, which can serve as a stage, but can also be a smaller event space with City Hall as a backdrop, multiple terraces to hang out on a daily basis, a new Faneuil Promenade, which accessibly brings people from the main plaza down to the top of the stairs on the Washington Mall area, and accessibility upgrades at the main entry, which we'll talk through. So that's the full concept. The city has elected to invest first in phase 1 of that, and I think it's important to see right here that the city has prioritized a number of elements very highly. First, in phase 1, we're going to get all of the activity and programming and accessible connections along the north side of the plaza. We're going to invest immediately in all of the infrastructural upgrades necessary to host great events on the plaza, a diversity of great events. And we're going to invest immediately in accessibility upgrades to ensure that all people can arrive at the main entrance of City Hall accessibly, no matter what mode of transportation they use. So a new accessible entrance, as well as a new accessible route up to the 4th floor courtyard, which is behind you. In many ways, it's one of the most magical parts of this building, and we believe that it should be opened up again to public use. So I'm going to show you a series of kind of what this looks like now. So comparisons of before and after. So this is the aerial view. If you're flying like a bird over one center plaza, this is the view of the plaza you currently have. Contrast that with the new vision. You'll see immediately that we're adding a lot of trees. So this plaza is significantly greener than it once was. That is also including additional green infrastructure like stormwater benefits. That stormwater is being infiltrated, and we're demonstrating how that's working to the public. You can also see that the main plaza area, which here is showing a farmer's market, has been right-sized. So it's no longer a vast space. There are a lot of human-scaled spaces on the edge of that to hang out on a daily basis. And then the upper plaza you can see is a flexible space which has a stage and a covering, and it can be used for small events facing that building with a beautiful backdrop of the west facade of the building, or it can be used as a stage which sits above the main plaza for a much larger event on the plaza. So I'm going to walk you now through some of the benefits of the project relative to those pillars that I talked about before. So Boston's front yard is really about universal accessibility and ensuring that this is a place that Bostonians want to come and be and interact with each other on a daily basis. So this diagram just really shows in blue arrows all of the accessible routes into the plaza. So right now, if you come to the plaza on any corner, you're blocked by stairs. And so this is a dramatic transformation of accessibility. You use a wheelchair, or a friend uses a wheelchair, you can now arrive to the plaza and all its spaces the same way that everyone else does. So it's really a welcoming space for all Bostonians. In the darker orange, you can see all the places that would be available now to hang out on a daily basis. So these are places you could grab a lunch, you could grab a coffee with friends, sit in the shade, enjoy some chatting on a bench. Lots of accessibility. You can see lots of new places to sit. So here is a view of the current view. As you come into the plaza from Congress Street, you're greeted by a wall of granite steps. It's a pretty unwelcoming side of the plaza. Contrast that with the future view, and you'll see that you're now welcomed by one accessible route. This is what we call the Hanover Promenade, which brings you on a sloped walkway all the way up to the main plaza. You pass by a newly opened north entrance on the way. That sculpture is a piece of public art which would guide you to that north entrance. On the right-hand side, you see that there's welcoming signage which cues you into where you're arriving to, as well as a playscape which is built into the hill and the grade change between the high-up terrace above and Congress Street. Here's just a markup of that with some of those benefits, talking about how this really is a new welcoming front door to Boston's plaza. You'll get a chance to engage with some of these in more depth at the stations after this presentation, so I'm going pretty quickly. Coming up into the plaza just a little bit, this is a view currently again of those steps. You're looking back towards Boston Public Market. Some of you may have come out and enjoyed the virtual reality stations on the plaza with us just now and gotten a sense of what this view looks like. But the future view there, instead of those granite steps, which are not activated, is a playscape. You'll notice immediately that this isn't your average playground. The intent here is not to be a playground just like any other neighborhood playground in Boston, but to be a destination playground that can only be at Boston City Hall Plaza. So you'll see that the materiality of this space, the brick and the concrete and the granite have been recycled from the original design, and this space really uses modern era playscapes as an inspiration to ensure that families are drawn here and want to stay here because they're playing in a civic space that is really unlike any other. Turning around from that view, so just turning 180 degrees, this is the current north entrance. As I mentioned, it's been closed since 9/11 because of the need to provide security screening and the small size of the lobby down there. So the design is actually going to pull the glass facade, which is set way back in this picture, out towards us to enable room for that security screening station. The difference is very subtle from an architectural standpoint. So we've met with preservation groups who are pretty supportive of this plan as a very tactile or tactical intervention. You can see that space makes room for a new secure entrance to the building, which can become now a public entrance, and opens up the plaza space to that welcoming new entrance. So lots of places to sit, to park your bike, and to come into the new front door of the building. So thinking about event venues now, this flexible and accommodating event venue pillar is really about making sure that there's robust infrastructure and a diversity of different kinds of spaces that can host a wide range of events. So looking at this diagram, you can see that there's one large gathering space. I've mentioned that that's been right-sized to accommodate about 10 to 12,000 people in a crowd, but it can also support the kinds of events that Boston is used to. Boston Winter and the skating rink are kind of ghosted in there. You can see how that would still fit. Hub Week, farmers markets, Scooper Bowl, which is out there today. Those kinds of events would still fit in this space. You can see there's also that upper plaza, which can be an event space in its own or can be a stage and backstage for a large event on the plaza. And then there are two additional smaller event spaces, one outdoor and one indoor, that also support plaza events. In the pluses, those are all places for plug-and-play infrastructure. So these are places where all of a sudden it's easy to host an event on the plaza because you can come and the infrastructure you need, the power, the water, the data is all right there for you. So it makes it easier for the city to manage events and for people to host events here. So looking out across the main plaza, we know this today is a really big and bleak expanse. The future vision, this is an idea of what this could look like in the winter. You can see the main plaza can still host Boston Winter and the same kinds of events that we're used to today. The upper plaza sits above that main plaza. So it serves as a stage for large types of events. You can catch a glimpse of that stage covering there, which again can double as a small event space as well. You're viewing the plaza from a new terrace, so you have the sense of sort of prospect and refuge. You're sitting on the edge of something, looking out into a space, rather than just being in the middle of this large space without cover. This markup just shows some of those same ideas. I think it's just valuable to note that beneath this plaza, especially the main part of the plaza, sits a really complex network of train tunnels, some of the oldest tunnels in the country. And part of these renovations will be to shore up the structural needs of those tunnels to ensure that the plaza can flexibly host a wide variety of events. Currently, the ability of where you can put a truck and where you can put certain heavy program really limits what's possible on this plaza. So this will open up a lot more flexibility by attending to the structural needs below grade. So coming down back to Congress Street, we previously looked up into the plaza. We're now pivoted a little bit. Right here is an existing vent structure for the MBTA, and that is a structure that needs to stay. It's a really large presence on Congress Street, and along this stretch of Congress Street, there's currently no program. There are no storefronts. There's nothing really that draws you across the street from the Boston Public Market. And so the idea is to engage that space with a new civic building. This is a building that would provide resources and amenities to the plaza, restrooms and mechanical space that's necessary for the plaza, but also would have a large open flexible space that becomes a new civic outpost on the plaza. So the idea here is that you could host a meeting like this in that building in the future where folks could see it, pass by, be interested. It could also be a gallery space. It could be a space where you could pay your parking tickets without having to go into the heart of the building. Coming around to the front of the building now, this is the entrance you all just came in, so you know that you had to climb up about 7 steps right before you got to that entry. It's an inaccessible main entry, and the route for people who use wheelchairs or other modes of transportation is circuitous and not the entry that everyone takes. In addition, the route to this main space, the courtyard, is inaccessible currently. And the idea is that that's one of the most magical spaces of this building and really needs to be opened up to the public again, as was the original intention. So the modifications, again, are very subtle. There's a new accessible route, which brings you right into the main entrance. There's a new accessible route which brings you up to that fourth floor terrace and courtyard. And then built into the ramp there is a new speaker's corner for the mayor. So when the mayor needs to make important city announcements, he has a prominent space at the front of City Hall in order to make those announcements and address the public. And there's a lot of flexible space out front of that for varying sizes of crowds. So Boston's model of sustainability is really about ensuring that we have a porous plaza that can absorb rainwater. We have a shady plaza, which provides comfort to people and also mitigates urban heat island effect. And we have an efficient plaza in terms of lighting and infrastructure and power needs. So this diagram really just shows that we're planting over 100 trees on this plaza. The idea is to really provide shade, to provide human comfort. There are also, in blue, these arrows show how stormwater is going to be channeled in a way that's visible to the public and educates about how to channel stormwater, infiltrate it. It's being infiltrated where the trees are. These are all areas where there aren't tunnels underground, so they're selectively chosen to ensure that we can actually plant trees there and we can infiltrate water, and that water then gets recycled into irrigation the trees. So here's a view in the main plaza now. You're standing in the main plaza looking down towards Congress Street. And the future of that view is dramatically different. No longer are there steps that separate you from Congress Street and really bump down in terraces, but instead there's that one accessible route, the Hanover Promenade, which connects you from the main plaza directly down to Congress Street. So everyone takes that universally accessible promenade. On your left is a water wall, and that water wall is recycled granite from the original stair treads of the plaza, and becomes a cooling feature in the summer and an active edge that can be lit at night and really become a public amenity. On the right-hand side, you'll see terraces. We call these the arts and culture terraces that might be programmed with all kinds of rotating public art events. So that's what you see in the hoops there. On a daily basis, it's a place to sit in the shade, to gather, and to be. So here's just a markup of some of those sustainability features. Again, these will all be at the stations, and you can pore over them in great detail there. Finally, a renewed cultural and architectural legacy is really about ensuring that we honor the bones and the structure of this original design. This building is landmarked. The plaza has a lot of prominent views of the building and also a structure of its own. As a design team, we've spent quite a bit of time understanding what that structure is. So this is a plan view of the plaza. Everywhere you see the dark blue, those are granite bands of stairs. And everywhere you see the lighter blue lines, those are brick jointing patterns. And you can see that the structure is really clear in this original design. The original architects had an idea about Siena, Italy, and the Piazza del Campo, which had this radial pattern. You can see the way that expressed itself in both the jointing and the fanning of the steps. And you can see that they had a different idea about the south side of the plaza that was a little more referential to the building. What we've done is we've had a lot of conversations with preservation groups and determined that close to the building, it's really important to keep that structure, but we can diversify it. We can think about different ways to express that granite banding so that we honor the structure, but we update it for 21st century uses and needs. And we have also included important view sheds, so making sure that in that important west facade view shed, that those views are preserved. So you'll see the structure of the new plaza is very similar, especially close to the building. It preserves that fanning pattern in both paving and in granite bands. And then it's a little bit more flexible around the edges of the plaza where it meets the city. And again, that's working with preservationists, we've determined that those areas outer are much more tolerant to change. So you can see, I think, that the historic preservation piece has been embedded into every different piece of this design, thinking about preserving those views, especially of that important west facade of the building, honoring the banding patterns that were original to the plaza, but diversifying them. So they're now paving bands, they're water runnels, they're pathways, they're benches, but they're still an expression of granite that runs through a brick plaza. Recycling materials and ensuring that we're honoring the original intent of that materiality while also updating it for accessibility. and respecting the architecture. So where we're intervening with the building itself, we're doing that respectfully and in keeping with the original design. So we've talked a little bit about how we're reinvigorating the civic heart of Boston. What we've done is we've talked about each of these categories and these pillars of the design and shared a little bit, sort of a high-level touch on how the design achieves each of those pillars and really supports a reinvigorated civic heart of Boston. The idea here is that we're strategically intervening to ensure that this place for the next 50 years can be the civic heart of Boston, can be where Boston convenes on both a daily basis and for large events, and can be a place that welcomes and includes all Bostonians. So we've shared this vision with you. What we're going to do next, this was a really high-level, sort of quick opportunity to learn a little bit more, and we are now really excited to hear your opinions and your thoughts about the plaza. And we're going to do that by switching to an open house format. And here's how the open house is going to work. Ready? This is a quick how-to. I used to be a teacher in Dorchester, so you can get a little sense of like teaching right now. So step one, you should have gotten a passport as you walked into this meeting. You can hold up your passport if you have one. That passport is filled with comment cards in each of the 4 categories and the 4 pillars of design that you've just heard about. So what we're going to ask you to do is to think a little bit about those categories and fill out your comment cards at stations. So in a moment, we're going to dismiss from this space, and you're going to walk down the stairs and out on the front porch of this building. Those 4 stations have been set up. So we're going to invite you to visit each of those 4 stations. Each of those stations is going to be staffed by design team members who have Sasaki t-shirts on, as well as city staff members. So you'll be able to tell us your comments one-on-one, ask your questions, and also fill out your comment card and leave it at that station. Tell us what you like, and tell us what you still wish or wonder could be included in the design. If you do that, if you complete your whole passport, you get a stamp every time you give us one of your comment cards, then you get a prize. So we're incentivizing you with something really fun to take home, and we invite you to make sure that you get all those stamps on your passport, talk to people at all the stations, provide us with your comment cards, and then you get to take home a fun prize as a memory of this evening. We also view you, now that you've learned a little bit about the project, as ambassadors of the project, right? So we're going to give you a job when you leave this place tonight, and that job is going to be to share much more widely with the rest of the community what you know about the plaza, what you're excited about, and tell them how they themselves can also provide feedback. So all the information that you've just heard and that you'll interact with tonight is also online, and there is also a way to provide feedback online at boston.gov City Hall Plaza. So anyone who you know that missed the meeting and wants to engage with the information should be invited to experience that website as well. So Pat, do you have any final comments before we dismiss and we go down to the open house portion of the event?